Coefficients of inbreeding. Yes, we're going to address that right now. And here's what I'm going to have you guys do. Because you know what? I can teach you this stuff. I know this stuff, coefficient of inbreeding. It's Wright's formula, 1922, 21, somewhere in there it was created. We currently have a much better way to determine important features like how closely inbred and line bred your dog is. But these are the questions you need to go and ask AI, Google AI, any of them, because if you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. You need to know what are the right questions to determine that the information that I'm getting is accurate. If you don't know the right questions, are you going to get the information that you want? So the importance of a coefficient of inbreeding has been used since the 1920s for humans, animals, everything, to determine how many genes are homozygous in that thing, that living thing. What is homozygous and what is heterozygous? Those are questions you need to know. So what you need to do is ask, what does homozygous mean? What does heterozygous mean? Do those questions. The importance of doing a coefficient of inbreeding rests upon this single point. How many generations are you going to use to evaluate that coefficient of inbreeding? How many dogs are in a 4-generation pedigree? Ask that question. Go learn that. How many dogs are there in a 4-generation pedigree? How many dogs are there in a 6-generation pedigree? How many dogs in an 8-generation? And how about a 10 or a 12 or a 13? Okay, you need to know those things because it's exponentially more. So those people that are doing a coefficient of inbreeding on a 3 or 4-generation pedigree, absolutely inaccurate. It means nothing. Because ultimately, you need to go back to founders. How many generations is that? 30 generations or more. So you can't. So what you do is that the coefficient of inbreeding, it says right here, the question is, how many generations of a pedigree do I need to evaluate to establish a true coefficient of inbreeding in my dog or in my anything? It's coefficient of inbreeding and pedigree depth. How many breeders know that? How many breeders have you talked to that know that if you don't have a coefficient of inbreeding for about 10 generations on your dog, you don't have a true coefficient of inbreeding? So there's another coefficient of inbreeding, right? Through Embark. And this was created 9 years ago. And I happen to be a part of the opposing forces who were trying to explain to the Doberman Pinscher world that the Embark test is crap. Well, here's why, okay? SNPs, those are the terms, those are the things they use to determine an Embark pedigree search for the recessive traits of 200 diseases of 400 breeds of dogs. You do know that your dog isn't cleared from 200 diseases. No, 400 breeds of dogs use this test to determine recessive traits that might be deleterious if you know they're there. So there's about 6 of them that are pretty inconsequential because DCM 1 and 2 means nothing. So Embark was trying to compete with the actual breeding tool to help you establish a much more important picture of your dog. That is using betterbred.com and the veterinary genetics labs here at UC Davis's diversity test. So the reason why the coefficient of inbreeding in Embark is not accurate at all, okay, is because the SNP machines that they use they use a 200,000 snap machine. 200,000 genes they look at, but the dog has 1 trillion. What is the percentage of 200,000 against 1 trillion? That's like doing pedigree research in the first 4 or 5, maybe even 6 generations, which is not accurate. It's not high enough. So if your dogs have done an embark coefficient of inbreeding and they are above 25% COI, do you know what a 25% COI means in Wright's coefficient of inbreeding? Go ask that question. How inbred is a dog with a coefficient of inbreeding of 25%? It's like a parent to a child. Is that inbred enough for you? So don't use the embark coefficient of inbreeding because the tool is not really doing anything. Okay, it's not helping you know how closely related your dogs are based on their actual DNA allelic dispensation and profile, which is what I know about my dogs. And I'm going to do another tutorial about what I just learned and trying to do another one of my pairings with my dogs, talking about breeding Gertie to this dog Phoenix possibly, or breeding him to my boo-boo, and I will explain why I would breed to a cryptorchid dog. Yes, I'll get flamed for that. I will get flamed, no doubt. But when I explain to you why I would use him, I think it will make perfect sense, okay? So go ahead and flame away all you haters that are on my page that are stalking me to go report back to your masters about what's Diva doing now? What's she doing now? What's she trying to educate on now? So asking the right questions of the tools one would use to do research, and anybody who says that Google, AI, this stuff, this is searching tens of thousands of peer-reviewed articles and articles of all kinds to construct a narrative for you to understand in layman's terms what you asked. So it's absolutely imperative that you know that number one, the embark test is crap, and anybody claiming that it's a DNA test and it's valuable, and okay, you need to run from those breeders like fast, because they don't know kindergarten genetics or breeding anything. Okay, they're kindergartners. They're like my son, who used to say, "No, Mom, it's not a pterodactyl, it's a carodactyl." Okay? He was 3. And that's what I hear from these people when they say, "Oh, I did the embark testing and my dogs I got the DNA profile." What you need to do is to ask the right questions of these research tools so you get the right answers. So the right question to ask so that you can read all of this information, it says an AI overview of a coefficient of inbreeding. It's also important if you're doing a coefficient of inbreeding and you have a pedigree, that it's complete, that you aren't missing dogs. The next thing that AI tells you is coefficient of inbreeding and pedigree depth. These are things I've been teaching for 9 years. And the importance of completeness in that pedigree. How many of these people have a pedigree that when you go back 8, 10 generations, there's a whole bunch of dogs missing. Okay, so there's no coefficient of inbreeding. So we are working within a closed gene pool where a popular sire or dam is heavily represented in pedigrees. It's particularly important to include as many pedigrees, as many generations in that pedigree to capture the influence of the actual inbreeding. So you're going to have to go back and listen to this message again, and you're going to have to write down these questions, and you're going to get that book I told you to get by Patricia Craig's, The Art of Winning and Breeding and Get an Education, that I've been talking about for 9 years, and that book's from 1997. So, does that help? Anybody? Questions? Comments?